Welcome back to Mr. Screenwrite. In part 1, I took this lump of hairless gray manatee clay and turned it into Appa, the balding sky bison. With the help of a toothbrush, he grew a fabulous bowl cut, and then he got the confidence to make new friends, a tiny team avatar. Look at that glow up. But now, it's time to put the fly in Flying Sky Bison. So watch along as I make this animated book Nook based on Avatar, The Last Airbender. I'm making my diorama box out of these 6x8 inch canvas boards. I want to limit the view into the scene, so I'm cutting out a square to be the window. It's a lot of cutting, and there, done. To give some stability, I'm making a base out of foam, and I topped that off with a layer of white foam board, so all the surfaces on the inside of this book Nook have a base layer of white. That's going to help when I paint it later. When frosting your foam with glue, be sure to spread things evenly, then attach the walls and wrap the book Nook in foil. That's going to keep it fresh. You can also wedge it between books so that the glue and the walls will all set straight. Now, to make the backdrop of this diorama animate, I'm going to basically be making a very long scroll. Nope, not that one. So I'm using these dowels and fitting these wooden spools on top to make the sticks and handles that will be what you turn to make the background move past Appa to make it look like he's flying. I carved and sanded the edges so there would be a little notch that fit right inside of the spool. You just want to make sure you measure the dowel so there's extra room to sit both inside the base and on top so that you have clearance to twist these things. Now, once your marshmallows are assembled, make sure you give them an even roasting over a campfire and... Wait a second. These aren't marshmallows. Besides Appa, I want to make sure this box has something to distinguish it as Last Airbender, so I made little tiles for each of the 4 elements out of clay. I printed out the designs and used them to lightly trace into the clay, and then I basically free-handed the rest. A light brushing of isopropyl alcohol smoothed these out, and then a quick bake for 10 minutes or so is enough. We'll get back to these in a little bit. Now that the base is glued to the walls, I used a hot glue gun to seal the edges into place. It's basically hot glue caulking, which I don't recommend as a home repair choice, but what do I know? I've only ever built small houses. I measured holes in the 2 back corners of the box, and then widened them so that the dowels could easily twist inside and there wasn't much friction. Then I measured holes in the same spots on the top of the box, and then once all the holes were in place, I assembled that top into place. These scroll sticks are going to have to wait though, because the way I'm designing this, the last thing to go into this box is going to be this scroll. Now, with the box fully assembled, I glued the 4 element tiles into place. The reason that I chose canvas board to make this box instead of something else was because I wanted to add some watered down modeling paste to give it sort of a rough textured look. I was worried that another material like craft wood would warp once I added that and paint on. While that dries, it's time to paint out our background. I used a long roll of butcher paper for this. That way I had one continuous paper. Basically, I think you want some kind of paper that's thick enough to hold the paint, but also thin enough to roll on the scroll. I used 2 shades of blue, white and black, and mixed them together a little at a time to create a gradient that goes from light to dark blue. It's probably about 2 feet long once I was all done. And I made it much taller than I needed, and I'll cut it to size later. I also painted the inside of the box in medium blue. You're not really going to see the walls or ceiling or floor too much, but this way everything gets tied together really well. Since the box is fully enclosed, I needed Appa and the backdrop to be evenly lit. So I used these string lights and taped them all around the box's front and ceiling and floor. They were all hidden really easily. I just used Scotch tape and ended up making all the difference with this. In my Zelda Skyward Sword video, I used cotton balls for clouds. And while the risk of fire is pretty low with these LED lights, I decided to play it a little safer this time And I got some polyfill for clouds. This is a little more fire resistant, just in case, because you never know when a firebender might pop up. Now that the background is dry, I cut it to the dimensions I needed so it would fit inside of the box. Using tape, I put it together on the scrolls to give it a test, and it works. That's a huge relief. Now, a blue gradient won't really sell the illusion of flying on its own though, so it's time to paint some happy little clouds. I'm using a few Q-tips stuck together as my paintbrush. I did a first layer of a light bluish gray. I am by no means an expert painter, but this was a lot of fun and actually pretty easy. Just lots of dots on top of dots on top of dots. I'm going to take a break right now to just say, if you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it. Then I covered the end of the Q-tip brush with some foil, turned it around, and what do you know? There was another brush on the other end. Pro tip, Q-tip. So now I went with plain old white and did another layer on top. This time I also streaked the clouds a little bit just to create kind of like a motion blur. And I think that helped sell the effect a little bit too. But now, with the sky all finished, we've just got a little bit left before Appa can take flight. For some reason, with the backdrop laid down, it made me think of a video game, and I would totally play a side-scrolling Last Airbender video game. I was hoping I could paint it to look like a stone block, but after applying a few layers of brown and some dry brushing, I just was not in love with how it looked, so I decided I needed to start over. I went with a creamier color, and I left enough of the brown underneath that it ended up kind of looking like parchment a little bit more with the canvas coming through. I'm still not 100% in love with it, but I like this a lot better, and I think painting the 4 element tiles gold helped a lot too. So now everything's ready for final assembly. Like I said before, I had to do this in the right order or it just wouldn't work. So I started by putting the dowels in, then I put glue on the scroll. No, again, not that one. And wrapped it around one side. Just be careful you've got the clouds facing and moving the right direction. Once it was all wrapped up, I glued the other end to the second dowel. So now there's no way to change out the background, and that's okay. I'm going to keep it like this. Finally, I glued Appa into place and glued some clouds in to cover up the lighting on the floor. This also helped diffuse the light a little bit more. And now, the finished avatar, the Last Airbender Book Nook, complete with animated movement to honor this masterpiece of an animated show. This has been one of my favorite projects so far, mostly because it's been a really fun combination of sculpting and painting and engineering to figure out how this all worked. While I liked my sculpture of Appa on its own, putting it in here has really made it all come to life. The fun thing is that this moving background of a sky could be applied to pretty much any sort of flying character or scene, so maybe this inspired you to think of something else you can make fly in a Book Nook. As always, thank you for watching. I would love to hear what you thought of this project in the comments below, or if you have any ideas for future projects that you want to see, let me know. I have a long list, but I'm always happy to make it longer. Please consider subscribing if you like this project. Check out my other nerdy crafts, and until next time, this is Nick from Mr. Screenwrite. Yep.